behalf of the Italian Trade Commission and of the Italian Trade Commissioner Maurizio Fortes that is not here tonight, I would like to say welcome to all of you. My name is Romano Baruzzi and I'm the Deputy Trade Commissioner here in New York. I'm very happy to say welcome to all of you starting this big event, Vino 2016. And before to start, I would like to say a special thanks to all my team of the food and beverage team from Italian Trade Commission in New York and from the Italian Trade Commission in Rome. Start from the youngest to the oldest. Augusto Martini, I think, says this, no? I had a very big team. He worked very hard in these months to be possible this big event. It's the biggest event promoting Italian wine in the United States. It's Vino 2016. And I'm very proud to announce that to our event, we officially will start tomorrow, we have more than 150 Italian companies, represent around 1,000 labels of wine. But it's not only the grand wine tasting that we have tomorrow and after tomorrow. Inside of this promotion event, big event, we have seminars, we have 11 seminars, and we have 45 speakers came from all the United States to talk about wine, to talk about Italian wine, to talk about the US market. And we have not only wine, we have also craft beer, Italian craft beer, and liquors in promoting. And inside of the grand tasting we start tomorrow, we have another important event that is Meet and Greet Expo for all the Italian companies who are not represented in this market. In total, we have 1/3 of the Italian company presented tomorrow at the Grand Wine Tastings that they don't have the important here, and will be a very big occasion for them to found an importer, to found a buyers. Vino 2016 is a very big success. This is the 5th edition in New York, and also Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City, said, I'm very happy to know about Vino 2016 coming again here in New York in promoting Italian wine, and I'm very happy about this big festival, and I'm very happy because this event can strengthen the relationship between Italy, the Italian companies, and New York. Vino 2016 is under the umbrella, organized of course by the Italian Trade Commission with the auspices of the Ministry of Economic Development, under the umbrella of a very important and big logo, the Extraordinary Italian Taste. The Extraordinary Italian Taste is a very big campaign, and the Italian government invests a lot in promoting the authentic Italian product under the Extraordinary Italian Taste logo. And the slogan of the Extraordinary Italian Taste is Buy authentic Italian, get more. The export of the Italian wine from Italy to the United States increased a lot in the first 11 months of 2015, and it was and Italy has a market share of 31.5% and the total export in value 1.4 billion euro from Italy to the United States, thanks also in particular to the increase a lot of the exporting of Italian sparkling wine, who increase of 27.2% compared to last year. Partner of Vino 2016 is also Fiera di Verona, who present the Vinitaly Wine Academy with organizing 2 seminars dedicated to the craft Italian wine and another particularly autochthon wine, Grignolino, probably some of you knows. On my left side we have important men, and I would like to say a special thanks to accept our invitation. In particular, I would like to thanks to Bill, the President of the National Association of Beverage Importers, Washington, D.C., who will be our moderator tonight. Jason, President of SIP Compliant. Chad, President Savorian, and Bill, President of South Italy Importers here in New York. And I don't want to take more time. My speech is very short because we have to finish everything before 6 o'clock. So I would like to pass the floor to Bill. Thank you, Bill. Thanks to everyone.
all of America has been preparing for months now for this day. A huge amount of attention on advertising and consumers, all focused on one thing, Vino 2016. There may be another little event going on later on, but I think the Italian Trade Commission has done a great job in teeing this up and getting the right people here and picking some great topics to talk about. They asked us to organize an event and around the U.S. market and some of the opportunities. What does it look like for 2016? But maybe looking down the road a little bit further. What do we see after that? In order to do that, I've got some great speakers today that I'll mention in just a minute. But I want you to be thinking about some questions that you might have, because at the end of this, we will open it up for questions from the audience. I know there's an event after this that we're supposed to end at 6. We're starting a little bit late. I'm surprised this is an Italian event. We're starting late. We'll be sticking around a little bit after that, so if you want to stay and you still have a question to be asked, please don't hesitate to run us down. The panel includes Chad Turnbull. Chad is the president of Savourian, who helped in some way to organize some of the wines that were here. He's going to talk about his business model. Bill Binczak, president of South Italy Imports. Bill's going to talk about his type of business and how products get to the United States from him. And Jason Eckenroth. Jason is the president of Ship Compliant, an innovator in the technology sector. And he's going to end up with maybe a view of what's to come. How can wines get here, and perhaps not in the traditional system, looking at new ways for doing that. In order to sort of set the foundation, I'm going to quickly go through some slides. We don't want to bore you with my slides. But I will tell you that these will be available. You don't need to take notes. The slides will be available probably through the Italian Trade Commission. We'll give them the whole deck, so if you want to get a copy of that, they can email it to you. I don't have any handouts. I don't want to kill any trees, so it's all electronic. Everybody's talking about the target populations in the United States. Who are they? Of course, we all talk about the millennials. Everybody knows that's a huge number of people from 21 to 35, 38. I will point out that the millennial population all turned 21, that's legal drinking age, in 2015. So this entire group is now legally able to purchase our products. That being said, the baby boomer generation is not to be overlooked. They're the people that today have all the money. So the millennials might be a great population to look as future buyers, but quite honestly, they don't have the money to buy the kind of products that you're probably bringing here right now. They will. In terms of what are they drinking? Well, I call that share of throat. And you can see here between 2000 and 2014, there has been a shift. There's been a shift principally from beer to other products. The other products are distilled spirits and wine. Wine has achieved a greater share of the consumer appetite, not to the degree of spirits, but it's continuously progressing and has increased over 22 years of it each year. Now, the reason I think beer is sliding is because the American population, and particularly younger drinkers, are not drinking the light lager beers anymore. They're kind of drifting towards craft beers. So there's a tremendous interest in craft. We just had a report out a few weeks ago that we now have reached over 4,100 craft breweries in the United States. That's the highest number of craft breweries since 1883. At one point in time, there were only 50 breweries in the United States, just before Prohibition. And then just after Prohibition, of course, there were a low number as well. But that's a huge attraction, particularly for millennials. You can see here in terms of per capita consumption, America is way behind the rest of the world. The per capita consumption in countries like France and Italy is much higher, but it's actually dropping faster. per capita consumption in the United States is roughly under 2 gallons per citizen when averaged across the whole population of legal drinking age people. But you can see in this slide that there's a gradual continuing increase in per capita consumption. Now, in terms of where we are people able to afford wine, Italian wine? It's a little bit more expensive because it has to come a longer distance. There's a number of factors that you have to build into the price. But I have this slide up there to show you that the employment data for the United States is actually right now spectacular. They just announced last week that employment was just below 5%. Now, unemployment, excuse me. So unemployment being below 5% is usually the economists say that is the definition of full employment, because you never have people totally out of a job. There's always somebody who doesn't have a job. But if you're under 5%, you're essentially almost at full employment levels. Now, one other thing to look at this slide, just for a takeaway, is you can see the recession in 2001 dropped down almost to the level we had in 2008, but it recovered much faster. That recession that we went through in 2008 took almost twice as long to return to the level of employment that we have today. So, number one, we don't want another recession. In terms of what to expect in 2016, there are a number of trends, and I'm sure some of the other speakers will go through this. But I wanted to point out that one of the things that we see in this country in decline are jug wines and box wine, big, inexpensive value wines. The Central Valley of California, they're pulling out grapevines because they can't sell this product. These are really the wines that attracted the American consumer in the 50s and 60s, and they've lingered on, but they're passé. And what are people shifting to? They're shifting to a more premium wine, finer wines, looking at varietals, looking at red blends. They're very excited about the attractiveness and the uniqueness and the authenticity of imported wines. Also, there's a strong dollar at play right now. It makes imported product much more accessible to U.S. consumers. At the same time, per capita consumption is dropping in the rest of the world that's making wine, so they've got to get rid of it. They've got to find places to sell it. The U.S. market turns out to be probably one of the best places in the world. Our total consumption is first in the world. Even though per capita consumption is relatively low, we have so many consumers that it makes a huge place to sell wine. Roughly speaking, we're looking at about 38 million wine consumers in this market, and with a per capita consumption below 2 gallons, you can see there's a tremendous amount of growth opportunity in that. And as I said before, wine consumption growth has been increasing for over 22 years. Just a quick slide to show you that Italy has got 62% of the attention of our wine consumers from the standpoint of place of origin for imported wines. Just one comment about wine reviews. I just wanted to, the population that looks very attractive right now, the millennial population, is interested in wine reviews, but it's not Robert Parker or the Wine Spectator. They're interested in wine reviews that are coming from alternate sources, bloggers, their friends, sources that are not the norm. Some of the wine reviews we've seen that the baby boomers latch onto are those little stickers that you see on the shelves, 91 points, 92 points, 89 points. But I think you've got the opportunity now with this new population of looking at other ways to get to them in terms of the value of these reviews. Transitioning to how do you get your product here? There's a lot of different models. Clearly, there's huge importers who are bringing products in from around the world. They're well known, Palm Bay, Diageo, Constellation Brands, Winebow, others. But it's tough to get their attention because their portfolio is so large. I've had a number of these importers and wholesalers. I said, well, why can't you pick up a small winery from Italy, a small supplier? And their comment to me was, my warehouse is full of other people's dreams. I don't need any more dreams in my warehouse. So the problem is convincing the importer and the distributor in the United States that what you are selling and what you are providing is not a dream, it's a reality. People love it, and for the reasons that only you can explain as producers. Mid-sized producers, local and regional distributors, we have service companies. I think Thad is going to talk about that a little bit, about the service model, and other kinds of import models. And Jason's going to talk about you know, a new developing alternative way that principally is available for U.S. consumers, but not for importers to any wide degree. So we're going to talk about all those models, but a couple of cautionary tales. I always tell people when they come to me and they want to import to the United States that know your parameters. Do you have enough money to see you through to actually making a profit off the bottles that you sell here, that you send here? Because there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of legwork, there's a lot of travel involved in breaking into this market. What I'd like to do now is just transition to the other members of our panel. First, I'll go to Chad and let Chad take it from there.
Bill, thanks for the handoff. I want to first start saying that Vino 2016, by far in my experience in the wine industry, is the biggest event in New York City for wine. It is the most organized this year that I've ever seen, and I'm proud to be up here with everybody else. So congrats on putting off a very, very good start to this campaign. I am a native New Yorker. I was born here, so I know the market pretty well. I've also spent about 6 years in Europe, in Barcelona, in Milan, and Catanzaro, while spending some time in, I see somebody laughing at Catanzaro. I have a soft spot for the South. I also spent some time in China and Australia in my time of international business. I did a PhD over at Asade, and I did a lot of research in Bocconi while I was over there. So I'm very familiar with the European market. I'm very familiar with Italians, and I go over there frequently. I'm always going to be a Barcelona fan, but Florentina I kind of root for occasionally. One of the reasons why I entered in this business and why we're up here too is to figure out that this market, to get in here, is extremely difficult to get into the legal ramifications. I know Jason and Bill and the rest of the imports, and that's some of the problems that people have importing their products, and that's what we're going to go over a little bit today. We're going to try to do the best we can in about 40 minutes, and also we're going to be here talking about this for the next couple of days. I started my company with one wine, and I asked the audience how many people have a winery with one wine. And it's kind of what I like to say is that I know how to make mistakes, but as I sit up here today, I deal with 14 countries and over 300 products. So I also know how to make mistakes, but I also know how to grow a business. One of the reasons why I'm up here is to help you guys grow your business here. My company has expanded from New York to New Jersey to Connecticut to Massachusetts and soon to Washington, D.C. Is there a little bit of feedback? Yeah, so maybe just. I've also unloaded 40-foot containers. I've done wine tastings inside stores, and I've learned from screw caps to forklifts. One of the things that I've learned and why you guys are here is that your qualitative data collection is probably the most important thing that you guys will do while you're here, is listening to the market. How many times have we been into doing wine tastings and just pouring wine? And one of the things that I want to stress upon while you're here talking to all the people from the United States that come to your booth is gathering information and asking, what does the market, what do they want? Not just pouring wine. Pouring wine is easy, anybody can do that. But when you go to Pro Wine or Vin Expo, and especially here into the New York market, people want to know who you are. Not so much what the wines are, but they want to know what your company is about quickly. And you only have maybe 3 minutes to get that across. And this is one of the most fundamental things in business, is introducing yourself and getting to that point. Some of the tips that I've learned, and again, I'm going to be at booth 167. I have appointments with several of you guys. But some of the simple things is that, what is a case of wine? How many think a case of wine is 6 bottles? How many think it's 12 bottles? And these are the little tips that I took a 40-foot container in the beginning, and they give a case of wine. But a case of wine, to me, is 12 bottles. They thought it was 6 bottles. And then we have a problem. Because the only one who makes money on that deal is the person unloading it, or your logistics team, which is your warehouse. I never made money, they never made money. But I still had to pay the bills for a case of wine. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 that a lot of people don't talk about when they're dealing with business here is your banking system. If you're still using Santander or Banco Popular or Deutsche Bank to do your transactions on international payments or trade or receiving, or if your importer is, there's third parties out there that won't take 3% and give you a really bad exchange rate. Now, all this comes into play when we're trying to cut costs. And we have to be so smart and not to give our money away, because everybody knows that if we don't reduce costs, our product is never going to end up on the shelf. Or if it ends up on the shelf, it's only going to end up the shelf at the price point that we really don't want. So it's our job as suppliers, and when I say suppliers, here in Stateside, I would be a supplier. You guys are suppliers over there. So if we don't think on how to reduce costs, the end product will never make it to the shelf at the price point where we want, because of silly little things like our warehousing costs are too high, or our bank is taking 3% that we didn't adjust for. Some of the research that I also have, I can almost guarantee, including myself and I'm sure Bill and Jason, there's been people that steal. When I mean steal, they just don't pay us. Some people do it intentionally. They go from small little wineries in Italy and Spain, take a couple of pallets and have no intention of paying. I call it theft. How do we prevent that? Very simple. Simple, you can have your son, your export manager, you can have anybody do it. Go online. There's websites called nopaiddistributors.com. There's LinkedIn, there's reviews, there's all over. Take 2 minutes with the smartphone and Google the company or the person you're doing business and see what other people are saying. Very simple technique. You'll find out if somebody stole in the past. Be careful on bringing products into the United States without a buyer. This is number 1. There's models that Mr. Earl had mentioned about service, clearinghouses that we can get into, and I'll talk about that individually after. We don't have time to really get into that, and I prefer, because of 50 states, there's 50 different countries, is the way I look at it. So there's different ways of looking at the market, and that I need to talk to individually with everybody. But if you bring product here, you're very excited and you think you might sell a couple of cases, but the pallets are here. Once the pallets are here, it is a time bomb. If you don't move that within about 4 months, you are sunk. Because the cost of warehousing and everything else going into that, you're done. Nobody's gonna make money except the warehouse. That's it, it's that simple. Networking with the Americans. When I did my PhD, part of it was psychology and business, and I was very fortunate to go to a very good business school in Barcelona, and also spend some time up in Milan and Bocconi. And one thing I realized is that the interaction between Americans, not so much New York, you have to remember that New York was the only state not to vote for a revolution. So they're not really part of the United States, in my opinion. New Yorkers are different. When you think of America, you got 3 time zones. If you think of 3 time zones, you're all the way in Israel, from Barcelona. There's other parts of the metro area that are so important to focus on, that everybody's dying to get into the New York market. But the New York market may or may not be the most successful market for your company. There's markets, Ohio, Tennessee, where Jason's from, in Colorado, that don't get a lot of attention because everybody wants to come to New York. And don't get me wrong, New York's the best. But there are other places that have money, and that a lot of importers or wineries don't spend the time focusing on. And this is such a big mistake. So while you're here, spend some time and look at the name tags and see where everybody else is going. And don't spend so much time talking to the PR people and all these other people. Go straight for the money. I travel to VinExpo. I travel to Hong Kong. I go to Dusseldorf to ProWine. And I see it over and over, people making the same mistakes, spending too much time not paying attention to who makes the decisions while you come all the way over here. And it's very important to make them feel special. So in sum, I'm here to help you guys sell wine. I have a booth, it's 167, provided by the ITC. I'm here, I have a hotel room, and I'll be more than glad to talk about business. I don't have any other hobbies except for business. So if we can talk about business and wine, it's right up my alley. So I'll hand it off to Bill.
Huh? Yes. Okay. That was great, Joe. That is some really insightful information, and I should have taken notes because it was just great information. First, I'd like to thank my good friend Augusto Marchini for extending this invitation and honor to speak at this event. I've worked with the wonderful people at the ITC in New York City since 2005 and have benefited immensely from the association, and I'm proud to call them my friends. I'm going to take a little bit of a different viewpoint than Chad. Ours is more of a, I'm a smaller importer from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So I'm going to give you just a viewpoint fairly quickly of what we confront every day from our business. A brief overview of our company. We are a small importer located in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and we have offices and warehouses in Newport Beach, California, and Las Vegas, Nevada, with upcoming representation in Florida and Texas, hopefully by the end of this year to early 2017. We could not have more diverse demographics between those areas, and frankly, I'm not really sure how I ended up in Pennsylvania, Nevada, and California, but just the way it worked out, and we've been very happy to be in all three areas. I must tell you also up front, I am not a wine expert or very knowledgeable on other wines other than the wines we deal with. What I do have, I'm just a regular guy with a long-time love of wines, in particularly Italian wines. I've primarily been a food broker for over 25 years, and I still am. In 2001, I started this company, South Italy Imports, primarily to import extra virgin olive oil and canned tomato sauce from Puglia, whole peeled tomatoes, and also some pastas. An opportunity arose in 2004 to add wines from a producer in Puglia to my portfolio, and I did so on a part-time sales basis. The food business has occupied the bulk of my time for many of these years. And in 2008, I modified the business model to include wines from every region of Italy with a focus on indigenous varietals from all regions of Italy. And preferably from Italian producers who have never exported to the United States. We try to develop close relationships with them, and we have, in every case, become very good friends with all of our shippers, our Italian producers. In 2009, I began focusing more on the wine rather than the food, and in 2010, my son joined me. Billy, can you please stand up? My son, Billy. He joined me in 2010. My daughter also works for me. She can't be here because she just had a baby last week. But we began a more aggressive effort at that time to follow tastings through the Italian Trade Commission here in New York and also visit Italy more. We average 6 or 7 trips to Italy a year in the last few years. And we've grown our portfolio from about 15 wines in 2011 to currently around 75, with more in the approval stages. We're actually leaving, my wife and I are leaving Wednesday for Tuscany for the Buy Wine. and of course we'll be at Vinitaly and possibly Provine. I've heard so many positive things about that. One of our producers is actually here, Vincenzo from Tenuti Galfano in Sicily, and Marco Caligeris from Conti Dattimus in Friuli. We value their friendship as much as their wines, as we do with all our producers. Now, although we have been working diligently for about 6 years now, we still have not completed our goal of having indigenous wines from every region of Italy. We believe we follow a careful process of selection of these wines, and sometimes it can take over a year to decide on importing a wine. Since we are in very different marketplaces here in the U.S., with ever-changing social and industry influences, we have had to remain in a constant state of motion and awareness. We have also experienced a lot of trial and error with what wines we present in our various markets. However, we have found a few things in common, whether it's in California, Las Vegas, or Pennsylvania. People love Italian wines. We have found that particularly with the younger generations, people are willing to explore lesser-known varietals such as Pecorino, Tazzolenghi, Cannonau. We have confirmed what Bill mentioned the slide earlier about the millennials and their tendency to rate reviews as an important aspect of their wine choices. The thing we find most interesting is that they do rely more on reviews with their friends via Twitter, Facebook, or Yelp, rather than more traditional forms of point ratings or wine critic opinions and reviews. They want to drink what their friends drink and less of what their parents drink or what a point rating suggests that they should drink. We have also seen somewhat of a shift in price points as most of our wines fall in the sub $15 range, so they're more apt to be selected as a glass pour wine, which has a tendency to generate higher sales for us. We have seen price points slowly increase a few dollars a bottle over the last 4 to 7 months with less resistance from customers, particularly in Pennsylvania and Las Vegas. I believe some of this is from confidence gained by our buyers that we will always deliver a quality product at an excellent value price, but also overall we feel the market is trending upward. There will always be buyers for the sub $10 bottle wines, but the point is we do see more growth in our higher priced, finer wines, as Bill mentioned earlier. Our manager in California, who couldn't be here tonight, offers the following insight through an email he just sent me. Italy is the #1 producer in the world, but California produces 700 million gallons or 26.5 million hectoliters per year. Unfortunately, in his opinion, to be successful in California, where the market is completely saturated with wine, price is almost always the #1 consideration. The actual selling of wine in the East is much different than the West, as we have found in our areas, buyers are more receptive to paying for premium, interesting wine varietal, which we feel we offer. Although we offer all of our wines in all the states, we market and some sell better at higher prices than others. Another consideration in wines we look for in Italy is that to date we have not purchased more of the Italian traditional wines like a Brunello or a Chianti. We have instead focused on the lesser known varietals like from Sicily, a Grillo Catarratto, Cesanese, Aglianico from Basilicata, Scapatino from Friuli. We have found they've been received very well in this market and also from that younger millennial bunch. But we don't ignore any age group. We feel that they're all important, and the wines sell themselves. We also see a growth in keg wines, which we just began importing about 6 months ago, and we've seen increasingly steady sales. Our product is a recyclable, biodegradable keg from Italy that preserves the integrity of the wine for months, and we believe this is also a trend for the future, and we will continue to grow the varietals we sell in kegs as we go through this year and into next year. As importers of Italian wines, we have some very favorable items in our favor for the future. To name a few and confirm what some of the slides detailed, Italian wines, as you know, are now the most imported wines into the U.S. Americans are now drinking more Italian wine than Italians, with Prosecco and Moscato leading the way in growing popularities. More Italian brands are competing and gaining ground for shelf space with some of the larger U.S. brands like Cupcake or Beringer. It is said that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Could that explain why over 100 California wineries are now growing Italian grapes, including Barbera, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, and of course Primitivo? Although U.S. wine consumption has continued to increase for over 20 consecutive years, it only grew a small percentage in 2015, and with close to 40 million wine consumers now in the U.S., there is a tremendous opportunity for added growth with the proper marketing and sales approach. Statistics will confirm many facts and figures, but in reality, we believe what is most important in selling our wine is the day-to-day passion and commitment from our sales team. We continually evaluate our customer base for opportunities to maximize sales, focusing on points like their menu items, consistent server trainings, as our wines require more knowledge than just presenting the next vintage of a Cabernet Sauvignon or Pinot Noir. We try to relate not only knowledge of the grape varietals we sell, but also the producer's background, which many times tells a fascinating story. There is no other country in the world that compares with the many grape varietals of Italy. Depending on what source you read from, and I'm sure you all know, there are close to 2,000 different grape varietals, of which only about 600 or so have been genetically identified in Italy. We do our best to focus on this group, and it's encouraging to see the slide of the expected trends in 2016 to include a larger share of fine wine imports with projected sales growth at an average of 11%. With craft beers and liquors increasing their market share in the U.S., we feel we are well positioned to promote and sell fine Italian wines from Italy that offer the same unique flavor profiles as enjoyed by craft beers and liquors, and we want to cut into that segment. I hope this has helped you to some extent. We will also have a booth here, and we look forward to seeing and talking to as many of you as we can over the next couple of days here at Vino Italia, and we wish you all the best of success. Thank you.
My name is Jason Eckenroth. I'm from Boulder, Colorado. I'm the founder of a software company called Ship Compliant. And Ship Compliant was created to help alcohol producers find legal paths to market. In the United States, as Chad mentioned, there's like 50 different countries. Every state has a different set of rules and regulations, laws that are in place. And we built software that made it very simple to understand what those rules and regulations were, and it was adopted by the wineries in the U.S. to use to sell to primarily to consumers. And so what I'm going to talk about today is an alternative channel, a channel that doesn't really exist for you. So it's a little frustrating conversation because I'm going to talk about something that's going to get you really excited. It's going to get you really fired up. But you can't really take advantage of it today legally, but that is starting to change, and so I think it's worth a conversation. So we're going to talk about right now the opportunities for foreign wine to be sold and shipped directly to consumers. We're going to discuss how that might change in the near future, and when I say near, I'm taking a long view, so like 10 years. About the U.S. market for direct-to-consumer sales. So I'm going to call it direct-to-consumer. So that's from the producer to the consumer in the U.S. In the EU, how many of you are selling directly to consumers? Can you raise your hand if you're doing that? One guy, two of you. Do you know each other? Okay. So it's really just one. Yeah. Okay. And what you should start thinking about today if you want to start to take advantage of this down the road in the United States. Okay, so for shipping direct to consumer, there are very limited methods to do it in the US. You might go online and search for a wine. Let's say if you're, you might even find one of your own wines. You find a lot of stuff online that can be shipped. Not all of it is legal. You can't always ship it legally, but people do it anyway. So what we're talking about today is the legal way to do these. And it starts with retailer direct. So you have a retail partner, a liquor store, a wine store that has an online inventory, and they're selling across state lines to certain states. There's only about 11 out of the 50 states in the US you can do this to. It's not a very large market, tends not to be worth trying. Then there's retailer direct in-state. So then you have a retailer partner who is shipping within the bounds of their own state. That expands the number of states that actually allow that to be done. The next category is winery direct. So there are U.S. wineries. Now, maybe I need to give more context. In the United States, a U.S. winery, say like a California winery, is able today to ship to consumers in 45 states, okay, versus an imported wine that can only be shipped to 11 states. It's not an even playing field. But there are certain states where, you know, a U.S. winery can sell your product. It's not very many of those. Is it not loud enough? You want me to hear? Okay. Is that better? All right. Sorry, everybody. I don't want to scream now. And finally, the last method is winery bulk. So there are operators in the United States that are importing bulk foreign wine, bottling it in the United States under a California winery license, and thus able to take advantage of all the privileges that a California winery has, say, in the United States. It's not always practical to bring in bulk and bottle it here in the United States. So what would need to change is on the federal level, every one of the states, this is the same thing that the domestic winery market went through 10, 15 years ago. There were very few states that you could sell to in the US. And what happened was there was a Supreme Court decision that challenged one state shipping into another state not allowing the other state to ship into it. And what the Supreme Court basically said in the United States is that every state in the US had to decide, are they going to allow direct shipping or are they going to not? They can't bias against one state or the other. Unfortunately, as farm producers, you're on the other side of that, and right now you're operating in a biased environment. One of the methods that could change is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership that's being negotiated between the US and the EU. If anyone is following the presidential debate, it gets trashed every time the Republicans debate. I don't think it has much of a chance if they win. But direct shipping of wine is an issue, is a top issue for the EU. They keep bringing it up. They keep bringing it to the table. It's not decided, but they're not letting it go either. I think they're on their 11th round of negotiations. So if it makes its way into the trade pact, then within the United States, the legislature around the country is going to have to adopt a method of either allowing imported wine to be sold direct to consumer or not allowing any wine to be sold direct to consumer. So I think that's the opening. It's not here yet, but at least there is a method. So why is this important? Only one of you is selling to consumers back in your own country. In the United States, direct shipping has grown to become a $2 billion market. It's a market with higher margins because you don't have a lot of the middlemen in between you and the consumer. It's also a recurring revenue stream because you develop a relationship directly with the consumer. You're able to market to the consumer and sell additional products to it. So it's become a very lucrative channel in the United States, and it's actually one of the main reasons that we have 10,000 wineries within the U.S. So they found many of them base their business models off of the direct-to-consumer channel here. So it's $2 billion. It's growing 8% a year. The projection is for it to grow 3 times over the next 10 years, all right, to $5.5 billion. So that growth comes from somewhere, right? 2 places. Bill mentioned earlier that our consumption is increasing and the number of wine drinkers in the U.S. are increasing. He mentioned that millennials are drinking more wine than the previous generations. That's good. But it's also coming from traditional distribution as well. Direct-to-consumer is growing 4 times faster than wine sold through a wholesaler, through a retailer in the United States. So these are dynamics that, you know, if you're able to find your way into, you can take advantage of that. This is a look at the demographics. So who would you be selling to if you were to be able to sell to consumers in the U.S.? Boomers are, obviously they draw the most water among all the different sets. Millennials having 10%, and that's more than the World War II. And I forget, what would you call them, swingers? The silence, that's the other one. But over time, you can see that, you know, the younger set is really where the the younger set is really where the growth engine is for this channel. So if you take a long view, if you think, okay, I'm going to walk away from today's presentation thinking about what if there was a direct-to-consumer channel in the US that I could take advantage of. I see that it's growing. I see that the demographics of it are going to be more edged towards the younger folks. What can you do today? Well, number one is to connect with your consumers. So many of you operate tasting rooms, you have events, you do pourings, you travel, you do trade missions like this into the US. Every time you connect with someone, what are you doing with that? Is it an ephemeral experience? Like, it's a great experience, but then you don't know their name, you don't know their contact information, and you hope maybe they'll remember your brand down the road. My wife and I, she's in the back there, we had our 10th anniversary, we spent it in outside of Udine in a town called Cormans, I think, in Italy last year. And we went over the border to Slovenia and we spent like 3 hours with this amazing family on their winery, with their winery, and they're pouring wines, and we had a great experience with them. We loved the wines as well. And they bid us farewell and ciao, and we left, and they never kept our information, and we haven't heard from them again. We had a great experience, but they could have taken advantage of that. Now, you may not be able to sell to them today, but you can capture their information. You can keep it in a database, and by doing so, you're building equity for the day that you are able to take advantage of this market. And those that make that investment today are going to be those that end up being able to take advantage of it. And they're going to be the first in the place. And it's not, this isn't a guess. We've seen it. We've seen it happen in the US over the last 10 years. The wineries that have succeeded immensely in that $2 to $5 billion market were the ones that held on to their consumer relationships. And that's what I would implore you to do if you're interested in this potential development. So that's all I have to share. Thank you.
It's an opportunity for you to ask a question. We've got a great panel here, experts, know their stuff. I'll throw it open to you. Anybody like to ask a question? We have a microphone here. You want to come up and ask the question? If not, I'll ask a question. I'd ask this group, in terms of somebody looking to come to the United States, what is the biggest pitfall that somebody new to that needs to avoid before entering the U.S. market? And maybe Chad or Bill could opine on that.
I think, personally for us, from what our experience has been, and again, this is tempered by the markets we're in and the accounts we have available to show our wines to. I mentioned that we like to focus on wines that are somewhere in the $15 a bottle range, so that in our areas that qualifies for glass pour orders, which is generally higher volume of sales. To do this, we need to be price competitive. And what I've found has been difficult is I've gone to many events in Italy and met great producers and tasted great wines and said, I'll take a pallet, I'll take a pallet of that, I'll take a pallet of that. And we end up sitting on it because the price point was too high in the entry market. So if I had to suggest anything, it would be, what wine can you part with that would be price competitive in the United States for your importer right off the bat, so there's no bad relationship to start off with, and we can move your wine quickly. Again, that's not in every case. We have had some wines that we brought in at higher price points, but I'm talking about the norm to move consistent volume and quantity of wines.
Okay, you've had 5 minutes to figure out a question. No? Okay. Let me ask this question.
I have a question. How do you get your producers to, how do you get them to think in that way of thinking that it's okay to put sfuso, if you will, in a keg? And then how do you bring the wine over here and sell it in the United States and get people to accept it for what it is?
Well, first of all, and that wasn't easy, by the way, it's a good question, because the producers that we have, and again, we just started not long ago, so We do have a Pinot Grigio from Veneto. We have a Nero d'Avola from Sicily. We have a Chardonnay from Puglia. And we're going to be doing likely a Negro Amaro or a Primitivo from Puglia. These are price competitive wines. The producer can move a wine in bulk that he's storing in steel, for example, rather than bottles. So he saves that cost. And we address it right up front. In most cases so far, it's been well received because almost all of them have some bulk juice that we wouldn't put a higher quality wine in there. Like I wouldn't take, for example, our Tazzalenga or Scapatino from Friuli and put it in a keg. First of all, the producer wouldn't do that in the first place, but we wouldn't do it either. So at first it was a little difficult, but they got used to it. Fortunately, our keg supplier is in Italy, and they worked with the producers in Italy. So they were comfortable with the transition, and it's actually a very simple process. And it's worked very well, and it's actually a really rapidly growing segment for us. We're excited about it. That's why we're going to be expanding into some varietals carefully. I hope that answered.
Okay, there's a question over here.
Yeah, quick question for Jason. Did you say what the market share was for DTC in the U.S.?
No, I didn't share that. It's 3%.
Okay.
Yeah, 3% of our huge market is phenomenal, though. When you
So
think
the
about it.
value I got, yeah, I wanted to the market
A lot of room to grow.
I'm just going to finish up on one insight. Well, we got a couple other. This gentleman right here.
Question. For me, being a producer of wine in Italy, selling a little bit of my products, only a little bit of my products here in the U.S., what are the most important things that I can have in order to convince you as an importer or as a distributor to buy my wines and to sell in this market?
Sure. I'll fill that question. That's a very nice question. What's your name, sir?
Fabio.
Fabio. What I look for in dealing with wineries is the confidence in the winery. Is that if I know that if I buy a pallet or two today and I'm going to grow my business, I want to make sure that your production is able to keep up with my growth. Otherwise, why start? Second, if you're in a category, I like to get kind of geeky with numbers. That's, I mean, to me, the wine business, I find it to be almost a commodity, where if you're not going to go into certain categories and find out that if you're not competitive on the price point, then it's it's not going to happen. Because nowadays, there's so many websites out, at least for the retail buyer. If you're sitting in a major retail chain or even a small one, there's so much quantitative information that all you have to do is pull down a tab. You go into Pinot Grigio, you say 750, and then you look at the region, and you see where it's going to be competitive. Now, if you're not going to be competitive in your own category, I highly recommend don't enter into this market because you're not going to get paid. They're not going to sell, you're not going to get paid, or they're never going to rebuy. So this is why the costs are so important. So when I look at my wineries, I'll get so geeky as to sit there and say, how many cases can you fit on a pallet? 56? I'm not doing business with you. Because if you think I'm going to carry 56, I can only get 10 pallets in a 20-foot container. That's 560. That leaves me room of almost 440 cases of a 900 cases inside a container. So if you're not thinking the same lines, I'm always going to have a problem with you as a supplier because you're not helping me help yourself. So it basically comes down to cost. I am not a farmer. I am not a winemaker. I sit at my computer with Excel. I went to school doing that, and I study the numbers on how to reduce costs. I don't tell you how to make your wine. I don't expect you to tell me how to save money. But in the end, I have to sit here in New York in the freezing snow, sell your wine. And if I do a good job, then all of us benefit. But I need somebody to work with me to understand how difficult it is to sell wine in the New York metro area. So.
And maybe one more question.
Yeah, so speaking of the New York metro area, so suppose that you do make a market entry to New York, how does that serve as a proxy or say a bellwether for how you're going to do in the rest of the United States, so the New York market?
If you're looking for the United States, and some of the people here know, the warehousing is where you first enter the market into the United States. So you might as well try to cut your teeth here because your product's here, whether you're in the warehouse already. Now the distribution system in the United States is, for the most part, is going to enter here into the New York, New Jersey market and then go from there. How is it a bellwether? If you have a little bit of success here, I'm going to tell you, you're probably going to have a lot of success elsewhere. But in order to reduce costs, you have to at least start making some sort of revenue, because most of the wine consumers for the Italian market, as we looked on the screen, California is its own beast, and they drink a lot of their own wine. So from the shipping point from Italy to New York market on the East Coast up and down, you have an advantage. You might as well try to profit here locally and then try to get your pallets, because most of the pallets are all stored here, going to Florida, going to Pennsylvania, going to Boston, all start from here. So.
Great. Well, we got 2 more questions. Let's go. We'll go.
Le département concerne winery campaign. Question is for Jason. In terms of logistics, do you think that logistics is ready and will be ready in terms of service, facilities, costs? Okay. I was saying, do you think that logistics is ready or will be ready in terms of service, facilities, and cost to serve the final consumer? Thank you.
Yep. My opinion would be that yes, it will, because there really isn't that much difference once the wine is here, once you have the licensing and you have your importer relationship. And the way it will probably show up is that it will be importers that are the kind of the licensee, the domestic licensee for the product. And so they can just tap into what has already been built over the last 15 years. And when I look at the opportunity, you know, I get excited for you because you see the split between imported product and domestic product in wineries, I'm sorry, not in wineries, but that split in restaurants and in liquor stores. And then you look at the distribution of, or you look at the sale of domestic wine to consumers, and it's a closed market. So I imagine that if imported product did have access, that you would do very well, and you would be able to tap into the existing infrastructure that already is serving domestic wine.
Thank you, Jason. I think we have one more question, please.
Yeah, a quick question.
Yeah.
So, we are organic wine producers from the north of Italy. Can any of you say something about the organic consumption trend here in the US? Is it clear, my question?
It's, you know, everything that we're seeing in the U.S. in terms of other food groups is looking at the consumer wanting to know more about what is in the product. So if it's biodynamic or if it's organic, it's all very valuable to sell a product, even if it's made in a green kind of way with solar energy or other things. The problem we have right now with wine is that there has not been an organic standard developed across the board for wine. You could say made with organic grapes, and you can say, you know, you kind of dance around the organic topic, but you can't say organic wine. The agency in the U.S. that deals with that is the Department of Agriculture, not TTB. So they've been very slow in coming up with a standard for organic wine. But will it sell? I think the millennials and even the baby boomers, you know, if you look at what's going on right now with lead in water in Flint, Michigan, people are very concerned about what they're putting in their bodies. So I think this is the kind of thing that if they can have a higher level of assurance that it's pure, that there are no pesticides, that it's been made and grown in a certain process, it's a distinct advantage. An advantage that they'll pay a little bit more for. One comment I'd like to finish up with, because I think we have to go. Romano telling me it's time to bid adieu. Adios. Arrivederci. If you look at this millennial population, they're in love with craft beer, right? But one economist who put some of these charts together for me told me one big factor is millennials are getting fat. And they're getting fat because they're drinking a lot of beer, even craft beer, that's high alcohol content beer, for beer. And they're already willing to pay $15 and up for a six-pack of craft beer. So if you can turn them ever so slightly to wine, maybe a low alcohol wine, a nice table wine, below 14%, I think you're going to be then speaking to a really a very attractive population. So with that, I will say thank you. I appreciate your time.